Hi, everybody. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for inviting me to speak. My name's Russell. I'm an addict alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 26th of 12. Really grateful for that. Well, I'm originally from Dallas. Sorry. Okay, thank you. I'm originally from Dallas. Both of my parents were alcoholics. Originally grew up in Louisville. My dad was a home builder, so we had race horses growing up, and me and my brother had our own horse and buggy. There was a little buggy we had. We would ride around town with it, and we sometimes we'd keep our horse at the house, and anytime we had to got in trouble and had to stay in the house, we would let the gate open so the horse would get out, and we'd have to go get it. He would always end up back in the pasture we kept him in, and the other horses. So my childhood wasn't too bad with that, but growing up with my parents until they divorced was pretty hairy. Very much like what was the divorced couple back, the movie where they were all, it was crazy. They were anyway. You never knew what was going to happen when they started fighting, but you knew it could get pretty crazy. There was one time, saw my dad chase my mom down the street with a gun. There was a lot of drama going on growing up. There was one instance where my dad had got a new Cadillac, and I guess he had owed my mom some money or something. They were separated at the time. He had a apartment here in Dallas, and we still lived in Louisville. And so she decided one afternoon we would, go by his apartment, and his car was parked on the street. We had like a 98 Oldsmobile, it was like a 63, 64, so it had these huge bumpers on them. They were like just battering rams. And my mom, it was me, my brother, I think my niece. She's like, okay, get down the floorboard, because we're in the back seat, and hold on. So she just started ramming his car, in broad daylight. And then she would just, excuse me, and then she would go back around the corner, back around the block, and go, oh, hold on. And she'd mash into it again, She did that 3 or 4 times. She did, I think, about $1,000 worth of damage. That was back in that was a lot of damage. But there was another instance. She found out he was, through the grapevine, that he was seeing somebody, so she decided she'd go check it out, and got drunk before she did, and went to the bar, and sure enough, he was with this woman in this booth. So she knocked the whiskey bottle, smashed it over my dad's head, grabbed the woman, pulled her over him, beat her up, and then she ended up beating up half the bar, from what I heard. And then she jumped back in her car. Well, my dad had asked his best friend to go watch his car because he didn't want anything to happen to her like the last time, So she barreled off, and like I said, she was pretty drunk probably, and driving crazy. And anyway, they hopped in the car to follow her, fortunately, because she ended up losing control and peeled out and ended up becoming airborne. She came down the car came down on the back end of a gas pump and caught on fire. But anyway, they were able to pull her out before the whole thing all blew up, So, War of the Roses, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, very much like that. But yeah, they were just not. My mother married him thinking he was in World War II, and he had malaria. And back then they thought that malaria made you sterile. So she married him thinking he was sterile. I was number 3. Yeah. So, and she was a real nervous Nellie. It just was too much for her. So she ended up going to the doctor to give her something for her nerves, because I had another brother. My oldest brother's 18 months older than I am. And, so she had these 3 toddlers, basically. And she was like 42. And the doctor ended up giving her, they called it the red medicine. It was like a syrup, but it was cocaine mixed with codeine. So, she got addicted to it. Apparently from, finding out, my dad told me later on, he goes, he had half the women in the town hooked on it. Even my grandmother. So she ended up spending some time in Terrell. Then back then they did shock treatments and all that. And my dad said she was just really never the same after that. But she didn't lose her temper. So finally they split up. I guess I was about 8 years old and we moved to Dallas, and my mom had never worked a day in her life. So she was just lost. She had me and my 2 brothers, and I had an older sister that was like 26 at the time, and she had just kind of run off. She had recently divorced, and she was real sheltered as growing up, and so she kind of went crazy, partying and everything. And so she had my 2 nieces as well. So there she was, no job, no income coming in, and 5 kids to feed. So, because my dad was kind of partying, going crazy, and was not reliable and all that. So that was kind of a struggle. My oldest brother ended up getting a paper route, and we lived on like beans and cornbread for like probably 6 months, almost a year. And then my dad ended up getting remarried to this incredible woman, my stepmother, who just died, right at a year ago, from Alzheimer's. And of course, I didn't get to see her the last year of her life, basically. But, then my mom started babysitting, and started, got on her feet and started doing okay. But my stepmom, when she came in the picture, she just kind of took over everything. She made herself responsible for us, for my mom, and she made sure that we were covered, whatever was needed. I had a smaller brother from her that contracted spinal meningitis when he was born, because there was 3 women there delivering at the same time, and my mom was the last one who got to. And so he contracted spinal meningitis, and he was treating him for the flu. He went, so finally the doctors said, if you don't get him out of here, he's going to let him die. So this was some small hospital up North Dallas, and so they took him to Children's Hospital, and They said if you gotten him here like a day before, we probably could have saved. So anyway, they were taking him off the respirator, and my dad was on his way down the hall to sign the death certificate, and the nurse went back in to clean the room, and they left him under the sheet. And when she went in, he was moving under the sheet. So he came back on his own. But, the fever, there wasn't much left of him. But my stepmom devoted her whole life to taking care of him from that moment on, and us. Never missed a beat, never complained, never, just I'm so blessed to have experienced such a, giving and unselfish human being. Just, that was just amazing. Of course, he lived to be 43. He was in diapers his whole life, had to be hand fed, and she could still pick him up, at 110 pounds, I guess just conditioned to it, which was amazing. So he died, let's see, about 2012, I think it was, yeah. She had about 3 years after that, she, by her own, that she did okay, and then she started contracting Alzheimer's, So she really just never had much of a life at all, which was sad, Now, my mom ended up dying when I was 19. That was pretty dramatic, it was. I had a lover at the time, so I was pretty involved, but I'll get to more of that a little later. But so, I started smoking pot in high school, earlier than that, I think. There was, we would go out at lunch and circle up in the football field, in the fields, and where you could see from all directions, and everybody would get high, right? Except there was one time they decided they would try to trick us. So they waited till like the third period. Everybody was nice and high, and they set it over this helicopter that was hovering. Well, everybody was so freaked out watching the helicopter, they didn't see all the cops jumping over the fence. Nobody really got caught with anything by the time that, that I was able to run in the house, but there was pot flying all over the place and whatnot. So, and my mom actually let me smoke pot in the house. She was like, well, if you're going to do it, I'd rather have you here where I can keep, watch and not be worried what you're doing outside. So, that, and I, drank some occasionally with some friends, not real serious. So, there was a few times I got drunk, but not a lot. And then, so I just kind of ended up getting out on my own. I knew my oldest brother's gay too. So I started, understanding I was gay and trying to make moves that way. My brother actually ended up, he was in the Navy at the time, and he had a friend of his, I think they were dating at the time, start taking me out and kind of get me, familiarized with this, that, and the other, and that. So I ended up leaving home on my own. Took me a while to kind of get on my feet. I kind of, drifted here and there for a while, and before I got stable. So I was on my own since I was pretty much 17. Then, met this incredible guy, fell in love, beautiful, beautiful man he was. And just, swept me right off my feet. I mean, just to give you an instance, I had got a week before I met him. I had fallen asleep. It was Labor Day weekend. I'd had this dream, and in the dream, it was really strange. There was someone holding me, and I could feel nothing but just pure love and comfort and security. And it was so amazing. I mean, I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, and I was pacing back and forth because I could still feel it. I was going, "What the hell was that?" You know. Anyway, when I got together with this guy, he had come in one day. I was taking a nap, and it wasn't too long after we'd met, and I'd gone back into that dream, and he got in bed with me and started holding me. And when I woke up, what I was feeling in the dream was what I felt with him. So, really freaked me out. You know? I knew I was in trouble if anything ever happened to him, and it did. So we were together for about a year, and he had a motorcycle accident and was pretty much comatose for 3 years before he died. And that I think my mom had died like about 9 months before that. So, and I was not prepared. I'd had no coping skills, to handle all that. I was just overcome with grief and just at a loss. I didn't know how to cope after that. So I took it really hard. So I spent most of my time staying in the hospital with him. He was in 2 different hospitals, 3 different nursing homes. Then they moved him home with his parents. His mom was a retired nurse, and I ended up moving in with them and going back to school and taking care of him at night and going to school during the day. After he died, I decided it was time to try to move on somewhere, could try to do away with the memories and what have you. And so I ended up moving to Denver, and that was there was really nothing that came good of that. I was there for 12 years. Not too long after I got there, I was introduced to cocaine, and that's what really got me started in my spiral. I started off doing it just on the weekends, and then became more and more and more. At the time I had my own business, I started, which, working from home. So I was halfway good at it. So I would make money for like 2 or 3 months and kind of get it built up, and then I would just go on this binger for like 6 months, and just to the point of where I was going to lose everything. I was about ready to get kicked out, and then I would kind of start to bring it back in to get caught up on everything. And so I was just up and down like that for like 5 years. Not really accomplishing anything. It was just it became all about the drugs and partying and all that. So, till I ended up, in and out of jail. I had one DWI. Then I ended up trying to come back home. There was a friend, it was my lover's, it was his best friend who actually came to Denver and got me. What he didn't know, and let me back up a little bit. One of the things I discovered was, you could write a check at the time. This is back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. You could write a check and it wouldn't clear your bank for a couple of days, right? So I started check kiting, severely. I mean, because I would thought I could spend money, buy my drugs. It got to where I was having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to hit every grocery store in the city of Denver, and pretty much all the suburbs as well. It was probably like 20 stores I'd have to go to collect enough cash to put back in the bank to cover the checks. And I would just, it was crazy. That's just insanity. And I just thought it was normal. I was just doing what I needed to do to get my drugs, So, and I did that like 2 or 3 times. It would get to the point where it was more than I could collect. So I would just have to let the checks go bad. And I would just go around and open up another checking account, start all over again. So I did that about 2 or 3 different times, and I ended up owing it was like $5,000 or something. But so, when I came back to Dallas, all that I'd left behind, right? So I'd gone to get my driver's license, and I was on my way out the door, and the state patrol guy goes, "Hold on, wait a minute. There's something, coming up here. Hold on a minute." So, it was all that. Yeah. So I got extradited back to Denver, in a Cessna. That was an experience. There was one point, we had stopped in a little town in Oklahoma at the airport to refuel, I think, because they had to stop in Nebraska. They were picking up somebody else. And there was this Mexican restaurant there in this airport. And it was this real small town. I think it was like the only Mexican restaurant there. So when we landed, they were like, "Okay, we'll probably give you something to eat, let you have something to eat and what have you." And since there's nobody around, there's probably about 10:30 in the morning. So about 15 minutes later, there's this huge line outside of people waiting to get into this restaurant, and it's all windows. And so I'm just sitting there, on full display, and they're all pointing and going, "Mama, what do you think he did? What do you think?" So that was kind of a fun experience. Anyway, so I ended up spending 90 days in jail. I had to pay back the restitution, the $5,000. I was on probation for a couple of years. But I always seem to manage to pull myself back together. And, then I got into this company that was doing mortgages and like a loan originator. Started doing that, and I was pretty good at it. Then the company decided they were going to go a new direction where they were going to do like 125% second mortgages, to people that had great credit, which had never been done before. And, it was a huge campaign. They had Dan Marino as the spokesperson. And so, and guess where they had their headquarters? It was here in Dallas. So that was my ticket back home. Because I was one of the top people, so I got hired to come back home. And so anyway, that was on a Wednesday. I had my last interview on Thursday. He gave me a check for $6,000 and said, "You need to be in the office Monday." Well, I had no car. I was still on probation. I still owed all that money. And some other things. So I had to, just spend the next day, just busting ass trying to get everything done and get out of town, because I had to be released from probation to be able to do that. And so got all that worked out. And of course by that time I'm smoking crack. So, it had started to expand. So the night before I came back, I think I was up the whole night smoking crack and caught a taxi and hit the airport and came back. And that went okay for a while. I ended up meeting somebody else and falling in love. And, that didn't work out because it was all about the drugs. And anyway, so I guess about 99, I lost my job. And, I had started shooting at that point with a couple of people. And, it just got worse and worse. And I ended up becoming homeless briefly, but it was a miraculous thing that happened. I had run into some friends at a bar I hadn't seen in a while, and I told them when they found out what was going on, they're like, "Oh no, you can stay with us till you get on your feet." They were going to be going to Houston for the weekend, and so we'll have to wait till we get back for you to do this. So I said, well, because I had some tickets out on me and whatnot. So I think I'll just turn myself in and do the time so I can start off, with a clean slate when I start. So, I'd walk myself downtown to the jail to turn myself in. Well, these tickets were in Carrollton. And they were like, so we can't take you because they have to be transferred before we can do that. So, so there I was, I couldn't even get myself arrested. Yeah. So I ended up walking back into this part of town, and and I started kind of talking to God, because I was like, well, I think I had like $3 to my name, and I was talking around. So, well, there was a Mexican restaurant there on Oak Lawn at the time, and I said, well, I'll get some chips and salsa. I'll pay for it. Just tell them I left my wallet, and I started having a conscience about it. I was like, well, is that wrong? I'm going to pay for it, but I said, well, so I started kind of talking. I said, I have no control here. So if it's wrong, just don't let it happen. So I get to the restaurant and they're closed. They had started closing after lunch and reopening for dinner later on. There was a bar across the street that I knew the manager of, and they had talked about, putting in an application as a bar back or something. So I was like, okay. So I go over there, basically because I had nowhere else to go at that point. And I walk in, and they're having all-you-can-eat barbecue. So, so I make a plate. Now, one of the other things I said while my conversation with God there was, after all, it's just chips and salsa. So I make a plate, and there's two bars. There was a front, a bar in the back. So I went to the back bar, and as I'm laying my plate down on the bar, I look over, and there in front of me was chips and salsa. And I was really overwhelmed. I really felt the presence of God. It was just, it was amazing. And it changed my life. It really, really did. I learned that, you never know God is all you need until God is all you have. Came across that reading a while later, and it really summed up the experience. But so I was okay after that. I mean, they came back. I ended up turning myself in the next weekend, I think, and did the time and started to look for a job. And when I got ready to look for a job, it's really kind of hard to explain just how powerful that experience was, and the presence of God, and how miraculous it was. But and I just couldn't make myself decide. I couldn't decide what I needed to do, where I needed to go. So I was like, I don't care. So I prayed. I was like, I don't care what I do. I don't care if I, do clean restrooms. I don't care if I'm homeless. I don't care. Just please put me where I'm supposed to be, and I'll deal with the rest. Well, I had put an application with a temp agency. They had got me a job before, and not too long after I was praying, the phone rang. This guy's on the phone. He goes, well, I've got your resume here. It looks pretty good. I think we could use you. And they were in DeSoto. And he goes, do you have any? I said, I don't have a car. He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, well, if you can meet us halfway, we'll get you the rest of the way, which is really a miraculous thing to say. So I ended up having to take a bus out to a park and ride, and they had the secretary pick me up, bring me in the office, and then take me back to the park and ride at the end of the day. So I was there about 3 weeks, and the owner came up to me and said, well, kid, you're a keeper. What's it going to take? And so, gave me the salary I was kind of making before, which was really pretty nice. And they said, this bus thing, that's not going to work out. You need a car. We'll get you a car. So I was given my life back basically on a silver platter. But I wasn't done yet, and I went right back out not too long after that. But the miraculous thing about that prayer was, so basically I got the phone call, we discussed it. I didn't realize this till later, but without me doing anything or going out on my own or doing anything else on my own, I got a job. So that was another point of God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, and showing up. So the next 8 years were really pretty hairy. And this company they really just saved my life. They did. I don't know if they felt sorry for me or what the deal is, but they just carried me. It was, I did my job, but I was a mess. I mean, I would spend my whole weekends just using. And so if I came in on Mondays at all, most of the time I was late. I'd look like hell, So that went on for 8 years, And of course the car, I would loan out to my dealer, to get free drugs. And so, and there was wrecks in it. So, within about 3 years, it was all smashed up, looking at everything. So anyway, the owners ended up selling the business, and there's some new people that came in, and I kind of knew at that point that my days was probably numbered. And sure enough, there was a meet and greet, and the new president, was there, and so there was a line, right? So he shakes the guy's hand in front of me and talks to him, and then he skips me and goes to the guy behind me, So that was a pretty good sign. Anyway, so I did get fired a couple of weeks later. So, by this time I'm 49, I think, and so I had some other connections in the business, and so I made a phone call. Basically, I made one phone call and had another job. I was like, the likelihood of that happening again are pretty, you're really pushing your luck. And So I had to start thinking, well, do you really want to be doing this in your 50s? Yeah. And so, I had one more little adventure. I ended up getting, like, probably the last 5 years of me getting high, I was just in sheer paranoia the whole time. The minute I got high, I would get into paranoia, thinking someone was in the house, all sorts of crazy stuff, So, and this last time, I'd gotten so high, I thought somebody was in the house, so I ended up calling the police. Yeah. And then I forgot I left cocaine on the bar. So when they showed up, I was a mess. And, so they ended up taking me in, and, so I got arrested, and then, then I started thinking that they were like the boogeyman of some sort, that they were like fake cops. They were like the demons coming to get me, So, and they kind of caught on to that and kind of fucked with me a little bit. They kind of stopped under a bridge and said, we're just going to go ahead and take care of you here because we don't have time for all this. Yeah. So, yeah. And I was okay with it, actually. Crazy things. So, I didn't lose my job. I was in jail for 4 days, and, finally got out and went back to work there. But we'll probably figure something like that happened. So, and I got fired right after that. So, so anyway, I came in '08, and it was, now mind you, the majority of my addiction, I was an isolator. I'd just get my drugs, go home, barricade myself, basically. So, and just, I always had a real hard time just being around people, just being conscious of my addiction. I was a dope fiend, just a cokehead. So I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of awkwardness, fear, so coming into the rooms was difficult. So it took me a while. Within 3 weeks, I was, I couldn't believe I was staying clean. My first relapse happened after 3 weeks. I thought it was okay to have a beer, and because I'd volunteered that day, and so the funny thing is, I got like a tall boy, went out to my patio, was smoking a cigarette and having a beer, and I looked at the clock when I took my first drink of beer. The next time I looked at the clock, it was exactly 30 minutes later, and I happened to catch the clock as I was leaning over to do my first bump of coke. So like within 30 minutes, my dealer was only 4 blocks away, so that, made it pretty quick. So that was, one of my learning factors, but I had many more to come. I wasn't, didn't really understand fully what I was dealing with after using for the biggest part of 30 years. Pretty much all the time. Anytime I could, anyway. And so I would get okay for a few months, and actually, I ended up having a year, couple of 9 months. But at one point, this is in my sobriety, there's somebody, another group that they were short on chips, and said, if you guys have any extra chips, come, if you could donate them, that'd be great. So I never had looked before for some reason, but I had kept all my chips in the same drawer. So I went, pulled them all out, and I think I had like 18 sobriety chips, in a 4-year period. So there's a lot of relapsing. and then it just got to the point to where I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep coming back in like that. And mind you, I'd had much of a life before. I had taken trips, had friendships. I had a life. I'd built a life in the 4 years coming in and out that I never dreamed possible. So I got scared. All of it was starting to slip away, and so I came back in. I was really, I finally got the pieces I needed to stay sober. I was in a meeting, and it just dawned on me, 30 years. 30 years you've used for freaking 30 years almost constantly. You're a dope fiend. There's, the shit knows you better than you know yourself. And I don't know why I didn't realize it, but I became aware of the fact that I was at the mercy of a thought. And that really just horrified me, because what do you do with that? How do you, so I got scared. I got scared for my life. And that's what made the difference. That's what turned it around. That's what, so I accepted the fact that I would never wake up another day in my life and not be a drug addict or an alcoholic. The other thing I accepted was that, I was going to there were things I was going to have to do to maintain sobriety. And I knew I could do it. And I knew there was a lot more benefits to doing that than not. So the last piece was I had never really dealt with my family part of it, as far as like the drinking and stuff. And I'd gone to get together. My cousin handed me a beer, and I took a drink. And this is so at this point I had started getting on my knees and praying every morning. That was one of my rituals. And so that next morning, because I kind of blew it off. It was no big deal. It was just a beer. So I got ready to sit down and pray, and it dawned on me, oh, so you're going to have a secret. Nice. So, and that was the last piece, because I knew my addiction, that's all it would need to take me back out, was me having a secret. That would be all, what's another secret? You've already got one. So that was the last piece to the puzzle I needed to really make it all work. So I came in, picked up a chip on August 26th, and that was it. But I knew that was my last thing. So I was more than happy to come in and pick up a chip and start over again. So I knew I was done. I knew that was it. Everything in my life has changed since then. Mind you, a couple of years after I left the company, the people that took it over, they bankrupted from 2009. So the original owners got back together and reopened it, and they called me up and asked me to come back to work for them. So that's been really nice to be there and kind of make a living amends to them for, saving my life, basically. See, I bought a house 4 years ago, which I thought I never dreamed that would ever happen. I have so many blessings today. It's amazing. Let's see. I believe very much in our community. I believe in the groups we have as part of the community and all that goes with that. I do stay involved. I do volunteer work. I work with Big D Roundup, other events, help out where I can. I try to stay in the middle to a degree. I will have to say, about a month ago, I did end up buying this new car back in June. Really nice. It had been, really the nicest one I had in years. I happened to run into our fearless leader a few months later. I was coming back from a meeting and had somebody in the car. We were talking along and I got a little distracted and looked up and I was at Oaklawn and Lemon. Looked up, the light was red and I got plowed. Totally. It totaled the car. I was horrified, and the car that hit me ended up bouncing off my car and hitting Patrick's car. So, so it was a real fun time. But God did for me what, and this is not a good time to be trying to buy a car. Trust me. So, but I ended up lucking out and ended up getting this exact same car I had before. I ended up having gap insurance and everything. So I ended up, and I'm actually going to get about $900 back out of it. So, but, that's about all I've got. Thank you guys. Thanks for letting me share. Thank you.